Welcome,
Yeah,
everyone. My name is Anshul, and welcome back to Policy Jam. Uh, Today, I have with me the brilliant polymath Soham, and we are going to discuss the topic that we were discussing last time. The breaking the pharmaceutical Gordian knot and then solving the policy trilemma. And Soham has a lot of at least I think three brilliant ideas in that topic, and we'll continue our discussion. Last time we discussed uh, the idea on affordability, and Soham will walk us through today uh, the remaining two factors in that. So, shall we get started, Soham?
yeah. So, before we really jump into the nitty-gritty details of the policy package, I would like to kind of touch upon this particular choice of word, Gordian knot. For those of us who are aware of the mythologies, and this will not come as a surprise, but the story goes that there was a very famous knot which basically was tied around a pole, and no one, and the challenge was to basically unknot it, uh, and release the rope. So the point was, plenty of people tried it, but and it's an ancient Greek. It's coming from an ancient Greek mythology, that plenty of people tried to unravel it, but to no avail. And the more they tried to unravel it, the more it tightened, and the problem got worse. So the myth is, the anecdote is rather that apocryphal story is that Alexander came in, and what he did was he took out the short and cut the rope. So, and there he said that there goes your Gordian knot. So the idea is this thing that often there are problems, intractable problems, which you cannot quite solve the usual way. And the more you try to solve it by piecemeal approach, it just doesn't go through. And that was basically the idea in my head when I was thinking about this, that if you try to play a whack-a-mole, that is, let me try to fix the affordability problem, then the quality problem may most probably will go worse. If you try to solve the quality problem, perhaps innovation may stop. And I'm not really saying that from any semblance of hard evidence, but the point is that, it is very much possible that one part of the problem, still solving that without a due consideration to the complexities of the entire problem, the entire landscape, uh, ends up actually creating more problems for the other parts of the other aspects of the problem. So coming down to the quality part, we have to kind of first understand what exactly is the problem that we're trying to solve. Uh, for those who have their memories refreshed, just a few months back, Indian pharmaceutical industry faced a massive reputation dent when they had to when they came when there was a case of India manufactured syrups ending up creating extremely terrible outcomes for a bunch of kids in Africa. We have seen this problem come up time and again. We have seen this problem happen even in India. We have seen this problem happen even in big companies when there were significant lapses, even in big marquee names. There have been cases where a big Japanese pharmaceutical MNC acquired another company, an Indian pharmaceutical company, and only after they acquired it, they realized that there are significant compliance lapses. So the point is that even if we do not really see it, the problem is massive. And what is even more important to understand is it's the kids who are often at the receiving end. Because, say, for example, a contaminant which should ideally be at a level X or below, if it exceeds X plus 1% or 2% or 3%, may not affect someone of higher body weight like us. But the kids have lower body weight. So even a 1% or 2% or 5% increase in a contaminant ends up affecting them disproportionately more. So the idea is that it's a multifold problem. It's a systemic problem. And often the bearers of the outcome are not the adults, quote unquote, the voting adults themselves, but rather the silent, even infants who are, as young as 6 months old.
I would like
So,
to
yes.
add one interesting related point. So my father is a pediatrician, and sometimes when I speak to him, what was the toughest part of his job was, he said, pediatricians are the only doctors where the patient cannot tell clearly what his or her problem is, right? So
Yes.
they have to, just by looking at the cries and body language
Yes.
of the kid, you have to
Yes.
figure out what the problem is, and that makes it doubly
Exactly.
hard. Right?
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, kudos to our pediatricians, but yes. And imagine the landscape, at least they operate in, when most of the generic drugs have a low quality manufacturing process. They have to be extremely sanguine about the quality of the drugs that they're prescribing. So coming back to the point of, and I'm a classical libertarian kind of a political leaning, and I will always kind of try to boil every problem down to the issue of market failures. So I would like to kind of propose this way, that when an individual goes to a pharmacy and buys a drug, any drug, be it branded, be it generic, let us not complicate the landscape. Let us say that any drug, and the person is not able to ascertain the quality of it in a convenient way, then what essentially he or she is doing is playing Russian roulette with his life. Now, the question might be, how difficult would it be to actually ascertain the pharmaceutical quality? Turns out it's very, very difficult. It's very it's complex, it's time consuming, and it's costly. And it's not possible for each one of us to do it. Remember, pharmaceuticals are time critical. So even if and the usual general sterility tests requires 14 days of culture to find out that if the medicine is really sterile or not. So it's not possible. Now, coming back to the point of Russian roulette, that when person is playing a Russian roulette with his life, he or she is experiencing a situation of a lawless state. It is as good as whether I'll be stepping out in the street tomorrow and get mugged just as I step out, or if I fall sick and I go to the pharmacy and I buy a drug, will I be basically hitting the unlucky number and ingesting a badly made drug? The precariousness associated with both leads to the lawlessness of the state, and solving it for better is a public good. So now that we have basically established that why do we require to solve this quality problem from the perspective of classical liberal liberal background, let us try to understand what problem for India is. For one, and here Land Pritchett's observation of India is a flailing state really appears, like it's an exhibit 101 of it. Land Pritchett says this thing that India is not a failing state, nor it's a flying state. It's a flailing state in the sense that flailing being the head has lost control over its limbs. And what's really happening is this thing that as a breeze blows, my body is doing things that my head doesn't want to do it. So the point that I'm trying to bring out is that Indian drug regulation ecosystem is exactly that. How is the ecosystem set up? The ecosystem is set up as we have CDSCO right at the top, Central Drug Standards Control Organization, right at the top, and then the state state level drug regulatory authorities at the individual state levels. And I'll call them as SDRA, State Drug Regulatory Authority. So SDRAs do work with CDSU, but they are not responsible to them. They do not really have to do a check-in, or they do not really have to do periodic kind of a touch base with them. They do not necessarily need to basically meet the goals and targets of CDSCO. Of course, they do joint inspection from places for certain cases, but that's about it. That's about the extent of cooperation between them. So what is really happening is this thing that the state SDRAs, the capacity of the SDRAs, or rather the incentive of the SDRAs are slightly disjoint. For example, the SDRA inspector will be basically monitoring the drug batches meant for its own state much more carefully than those which are set for export. And when I mean export, I mean crossing the state borders, whether it is national borders or whether it is state borders. So any batch that is supposed to go from Maharashtra to Bihar, the Maharashtra inspectors will not necessarily be as motivated to test it for the quality. However, the ones that are being basically sent to the pharmacies, the local pharmacies, all their attention will be there, because SDRAs will still be responsible for the lapses in the local jurisdiction. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is this thing that the SDRAs themselves are undermanned, as is usually the case in almost every. I don't think that there is any agency in India which can say that we are well manned. So we are either overmanned or we are undermanned. So the point is this thing that we are undermanned. So SDR is this thing. So that is another aspect. The third aspect is this thing that when in case of the CDSCO SDRA split, we need to kind of go back to the fundamental question: why exactly is this so? Because in our constitution, the 7th schedule sets out the responsibilities for everyone. That is union. It splits the responsibilities for union and the state, and the constitution doesn't differentiate between the multiple dimensions of pharmaceutical regulation of this entire landscape. It just has one word called health, and that is on the state list. And herein lies the point that is health a state list? If health is a state list, or if a health is, so let's kind of boil it down to this way. So is health a matter of local jurisdiction or local inspection? And if so, where exactly is it? Should basically it be regulated at a panchayat level? Should it be regulated at a city level? Should it be regulated at a state level? Or should it be regulated at a national level? What I suggest is this thing, that let us forget that there is anything called health. There is public health, there is community health, and then there's drug regulation. Community health should be pushed to the lowest tier of the government. I propose that 7th schedule is actually an anachronism. It doesn't have any, it doesn't have any meaning in today's world, in today's India at least. We should have at least four lists: union, state, district, and then either gram panchayat or city level. Choose your poison, or the 4th tier if you want to call it, if you want to keep it anonymous. So my point is, community health should be pushed to the lowest end. Something like a drug regulation should basically be in the national level. Why? Because the idea is any coordination problem between any level should be solved by the tier of government right above that. So the point is, if states are purchasing drugs from another state, then it should basically be governed, any coordination problem between them in terms of quality, quantity, or whatever that may be, should be basically regulated at the level above them, that is at the union level. There's another further aspect to it. CDSCO as such is also extremely cramped in terms of its own focus in capacity building. And I do not mean the numbers or the number of people involved in it. It's cramped in terms of its own intellectual capacity, number one. Number two, also in terms of the testing ecosystem. So let me kind of get back, try to go down into the details of it. So we in India do not really have the facility to do the testing at a manufacturing level, manufacturing site level. So what is the problem over here? Say, for example, I have a factory, just name it, Alpha Drugs Factory. Yeah. And it takes me about roughly, say, for example, 15 to 16 days to create one batch of, say, 100,000 tablets or a million tablets, let's say. Yeah, I'm going to export it to UN for UNGA, this thing, for order fulfilling. Now, what's really happening is this thing, it's going to cost me, take me 15 days to create that order. And then I'm going to ship it to the port. It's going to sit in Nhava Sheva or somewhere else, JNPT or whatever it is, for another 2 to 3 days, waiting for the ship to come in and for it to be put on board and then shipped away. The ship itself is going to take anywhere between 3 to 4 days to make its way to the ultimate destination, and from there, basically, it will get consumed as soon as it comes in. So basically, a crate, such a big, large bulk order will get consumed within a month. At the consumer level. Now imagine that the entire testing happens at the port level. Now, what really happens is this thing that, and remember, most tests can finish in 1 to 2 days, except only one test, sterility test. Sterility tests takes 14 days. But the problem is, because that is the slowest step, and no lab will basically kind of give you part test results separately, because again, this has to be kind of this is an evidence. So they wait for 14 days to to basically give you the full test result. But in the meanwhile, if I'm sampling the order on the first day it comes into the port, then 2 days of wait time at the port, 4 days of transit time, 6 days, and in the next 8 days till that makes it 14 days by which the test results come in, my order is about 25% consumed. Yeah. So the point is this thing that you really need to approach it in 2 ways. You pull the testing and the sampling bit up the supply chain. You do it at the site level. But when you do it at the site level, you run into the sampling problems and the inspector problems, the manpower problems. But also, what you do is you expand the capacity of it. Right now, we have the capacity to test for 8,000 samples per annum. Let that sink in. 8,000 samples per annum is nothing for a country which aspires to be a pharmaceutical giant or export house or pharmacy of the world. Now, the point is this thing that So drug quality is really a multifaceted problem in terms of, how do we really go about it? There are other problems as well. For example, once we do find someone who has been a repeated offender, where's the database for it? Where's the public database for it? How will a pharmacy, endpoint person going to refer to find out that whether this manufacturer, this drug is from a rejected batch or not? So, so we do see the contours of the problem coming up, and we do find out that what exactly we can do. So there were three committees which were being set. Mashelkar committee, which was one of the most influential one. Then a Katoch committee, and then a Chaudhary committee. Katoch committee and Chaudhary committee handled the reforms of the CDSCO in varying degrees, but Mashelkar committee was basically the end-to-end kind of a thing. And much of the details are actually taken from Mashelkar committee report recommendations. So what the idea was, at least what I can say is this thing, that the best thing we should do is we should start with the constitutional reforms. That is clearly set the demarcation of the responsibilities. There's another aspect to it. Point is this thing that while medicine and the health aspect is governed by family and health, Ministry of Family and Health, but drug manufacturing is under chemicals and pharmaceuticals. Rather, there's a department of pharmaceuticals under chemicals. So health is basically now being monitored by two different ministries. So we do see that there's an entire mishmash of, jurisdictions, one stepping over the other. We are not really clear about what we really want to regulate. Do we really want to regulate family welfare, or do we want to regulate drug quality manufacturing? Which one is appropriate for the level of the union level? And the answer is family welfare should be basically residing at the lowest level of the tier of governance. The drug quality and upkeep, the maintenance should be there at the national union level. So these are the ideas. So the point is, I think we start with constitutional reform. Let's set out the constitutional reform. Community health should be at the last level. If state is the last level, then all right, so be it. Then community health should be at the state level, and keep the drug regulation right at the top. Yeah. Then disband the current CDSCO and SDRA. Disband. And herein basically is the first nub of the losers that will come out, because we are kind of, disbanding governments, lock, stock and barrel. Agencies, lock, stock and barrel. Government agencies, lock, stock and barrel. So bureaucrats will be up in the arms. We will figure out how to kind of handle them. But the idea is we are not necessarily firing them, but rather we are basically creating a completely new structure and reabsorbing them under a new quote unquote contract. And the contract, I do not mean in the sense of employment contract. That too is possible. But what I'm saying is this thing that under a new level of understanding, and under a new level of organizational goals and vision and this thing. So, and we want to call that as a CDA on the lines of FDA, but CDA, and CDA need to be autonomous. But the problem is not that, buildings and new names do not make an organization. What makes an organization is its ability to kind of, achieve goals on its own, that is being set for itself. How does it basically build the intellectual capacity? And what we want is a CDA should work very, very closely with international regulatory agencies. There is no amount of isolation and silification and Vishwaguru kind of a mentality works over here. We will have to coordinate, because if we want to be pharmacists of the world, let us be very clear, we have to talk with our customers. So the point is, we CDAs have to talk with, I forget so basically I forget the name of the regulatory agency. It just escaped me. So I think ESMA is one of them in Europe. IQVIA is in Colombia, and FDA is in US. So the point that basically is that is one thing, and we need to basically talk and learn from them. That is one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is this thing that it needs to expand its own budget in terms of how it hires external experts. So CDSCO currently needs external experts to sit on its benches to approve new drug approvals and all those things. Often what really happens is because CDSCO is not able to afford outside Delhi experts, because there is a cost needed to pay them, to bring them in Delhi, to basically lodge or host them in a hotel or whatever it is. So what really happens is this thing that CDSCO ends up hiring or rather, contracting out that for those positions to the same old experts in Delhi. There is no diversity in in those benches. So that opening up of the diversification of the ecosystem has to happen at least in CDA level. Then there are other aspects as well, like we plan to set up like a ramp up schedule of the sampling capacity from 8,000 samples per annum, 24,000 samples per annum, and then from 24,000 samples per annum to 40,000 samples per annum. But the idea is that, capacity, this thing, a hardware capacity increase. So what is the role of state over here? What we want to basically think of is this thing that CDA, the newly formed CDA, will have regional offices, which will basically be formed as SDRAs. Like we can use the very infrastructure that SDRA has and absorb them as people who are directly reporting under the CDA. Then, of course, the problem is this thing that it is not just enough to get machines. We are not short of machines. We are short of people who will man those machines. And it so comes out that it's not only the point that people, the agencies do not have sanctions for hiring new people, but rather even the sanctioned posts are lying vacant. I do not remember exactly the statistics, but I think I was kind of doing some ballpark numbers and some back of the envelope calculation, and I was able to find out that right now the capacity that basically is effective capacity that the agencies are really working with is about roughly 5,000 to 6,000 samples per annum. So basically 25% of the capacity is actually lying unutilized. And it is not because there are not machines out there, but because people are not there. So we have to kind of adopt a policy of we will not age any vacant position beyond the mandatory 90 days. And just kind of, I personally feel that this no aging policy, this no aging red hard line can actually do a host of wonder in if the organizations that do adopt it, it can do a lot of wonder for almost all government agencies in India. Plenty of posts across judiciary to CDA is actually lying vacant because of this policy, because of the lack of this policy rather. So the idea is this thing that we want to basically go ahead and empower the CDA and build an effective regulatory body. Point is that it is not just enough to have an arm which goes out and has the technology and has the legal ability to kind of, has a sophistication to basically pursue the violators. It also has to kind of build in that ability to prosecute them. What I recommend is, in the first for India, that we should have an office of attorney aligned with CDA. Just like India has a CG, comptroller and advocate general for India, we should have basically an office of attorney over here. So this is an in-house legal cell specializing in litigating drug quality matters. But then where do they go to? We need to have the judicial bureaucracy who are sophisticated enough to tackle this problem. So in the book, Bitter Truth, Bitter Pill, or Bitter Truth was it, by Dinesh Thakur. So he mentions the case of the judiciary going extremely lax on the violators, sometimes recommending them to be sometimes recommending the violators, that is those who have been contaminating their drug manufacturing, with imprisonment till the sitting of the court. That means as the court will rise, so will the term of the imprisonment will end. So that basically can be as short as 2 to 3 minutes, which is basically a lip service to basically, the punishment. It's not even a rap on the hand. So we want dedicated courts with adequate support staff towards, hearing and resolution of pharmaceutical regulatory matters. So this is a high leverage policy area. Even adding 10 judges, 15 judges with their support staffs of 3 or 4 people is going to kind of completely change the landscape of litigation on the pharmaceutical matters in India. And we want to go one step further. And this is another cause of, problem that may rise when, and we will discuss about this in winners and losers. But the idea is the CDA should have secret fund dedicated for nurturing intelligence assets across the supply chain network. It has to invest in building that human intelligence assets who will basically act as their effective whistleblowers. In India, our whistleblowing policy is in tatters, and as a result, this has to be the only way we can build a secret kind of a fund which will basically get those people in. And a potential witness program can be also set up. Witness protection program can be set up from these funds as well. But then that is a different matter. And then finally, we need to have a public database.
Yeah. After Dinesh Thakur, I think his should have been a good example for other people to come out and, do what he has done in their respective.
Yes.
But it turned out that he was kind of crucified, and then
Yes.
he came out and wrote a book, Truth Pill, and which chronicled his experience. But that has not really set a good example. In fact, that has created kind of a warning for others to not do that. And I think
Yeah,
that the whistleblower policy and the protection around those things are very weak in India.
yes, yes. And this is the problem of Indian society, that we actually are extremely cruel to people who are who basically go against the commonly held beliefs and the national pride, even if misplaced, however misplaced it may be, is one of them. And we are very quick to take offense at people who hold the mirror to us. And we believe in basically shattering those mirrors rather than washing our face off. So, yeah.
One important nuance which I learned after coming into the world of public policy is the differentiation between public health and healthcare. And what I understood from the market failure framework is that public health is something where state should be present, and healthcare is where the state should probably mostly withdraw from.
That's right.
And when we talk about drugs, the quality of drugs, I think they fall into both the categories, for public health as well as for healthcare. So is
Yes,
that differentiation? I mean, what are your thoughts on that vis-a-vis your framework of handling the quality concern?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I do not believe. See, again, I do not believe that medicines should be subsidized. I do not believe that medicines, this foolery of DGCO 2013 and NPPA is basically stupidity. Sorry for completely uncharitable words. But having said that, there are different aspects to it. So let's say manufacturing of the drugs Should that be regulated by the state? Of course not. It's a private enterprise that can do it very well. Yeah. So let's move one step ahead. What it manufactures, if it is not within the ambit, how it manufactures, can it be under the ambit, provided that it is serving a purpose, and what purpose it might be. Is it the efficacy aspect of it? Well, the efficacy aspect of it is again the matter of the drug regulation, because the technical stuff. And once that efficacy and the quality and all those things are established, we move out of the aspect of, say, for example, pharmacology, like what drug combination should be sitting or should be prescribed to the ailing patient. Now, I also do not believe that it should be done by the state. It should be done by a voluntary group of either medical professionals coming together, or for that matter, independent scientific bodies, scientific organizations and research institutes who are doing it. But the idea is anything with that, there's a where there's a technocratic sophistication involved, state should stay out of it unless there's a very significant reason to improve the public good delivery of it. So I wanted to kind of touch upon this conundrum of what you talked about, healthcare and public health and community health and all those things. So health is, and I just was kind of, I wanted to kind of package it in this way, that health has many components. Yeah. So think about the case of performing serological tests on the community sewage water. Is it part of public health? Yes. Is it going to have an impact on the larger drug manufacturing domain? Yes. So should the private forces do it, or should the government do it? So point is, I think you understand where I'm going at. A simple one-to-one direct relation with the community, health of community, is a matter of government, and should be forced. And for me, the more interesting question is not really whether it's a matter of government or not, but rather which level of government should be doing it. So, in my opinion, that it's a twofold question: who will be doing it? Between market and government, who will be doing it, and between government levels, who will be doing it. Yeah. So serological tests, yes, the lowest level of the government should be doing it, the one that is closest to community. But what about air quality? Air quality also has a public health aspect to it. And can a municipality handle air quality problem? And if we want to go into that, what about environmental services? So health is perhaps one of the more confounding of the problems that we kind of face, and it's a bit of it requires a lot of thinking, and perhaps there is no single one-liner first principle kind of an approach that this belongs to the government, this belongs to the private market, and that's it, the job is done. So it is not like that. Because I do believe that, no man is an island, and, when a bell tolls, it tolls for thee. So the point is, coming back to the point that, there are many aspects to health, and we have to kind of think coolly about it and almost coldly about it, that what exactly should be deciding by, without any sentimental kind of a Vishwaguru kind of a thinking. Yeah. So coming back to the innovation side of the thing. Now, here is the point, and here is a conundrum. Like innovation, governments do not do innovation. Yeah. So is there a role for government to push for innovation really? So the point that I'm trying to bring out is the thing that we may argue that innovation creates knowledge, and knowledge has positive externalities. And in anything that has positive externalities, government should be doing it. But I'm a bit wary about stretching the logic a bit too far, because Uh, think of it in this way. In a society which is basically hell-bent on regulating things, you can find externalities and positive externalities or negative externalities in anything, everything. So recently, as we are recording it, a person working for a private company was overworked and committed suicide. Oh, sorry, not committed suicide. I think she passed away because of the stress and because of that. Yeah. Any enterprising bureaucrat can say that this is a negative externality on the entire, corporate culture, Indian corporate culture, and we must show that, the Indian corporate culture is not a body shopping kind of a thing. And I can justify that and go about regulating the work hours for the person. So I am a bit wary because I'm not really because I do not believe that the bureaucrats are really paying attention to the economics or classical libertarian principles. They are basically using whatever suits them best to expand their remit and things like that. So I think I'm a bit wary. I do not feel very strongly about going headlong into state action in any externalities. However, there is still an enlightened way to do externality management, at least in cases which have such strong spillovers, and that is basically the knowledge side of the things and innovation side of the things. So, however, what we want to say is this thing: we want to kind of create a environment so that the private forces get a larger bang for the buck for their R&D money spent. So what really happens is this thing that when government goes ahead and spends $1 on creating new knowledge under the assumptions of a high spillover environment, there is some research in Western countries that it attracts as high as $0.7 from private market. So think about the case of public finance, where government borrows $1 of money from the market, and there is less money left for the corporate sector to borrow from. So this is called a crowding out effect. Innovation and spending on innovation creates a crowding in effect. If government is spending $1 on military R&D, again, the most important part is under the assumptions of a high spillover environment, the private sector pitches in with 70 cents of its own. And herein lies the question that what is the meaning of high spillover environment? For one, India is definitely not a high spillover environment, in the sense that high spillover implies that the knowledge should be cross-pollinating across the domains. And not only across the domain, that they should not be really crossing the state to the market kind of a divide, but also between the market to market kind of a divide. So that between the individual firms to individual firms, individuals in a firm to individuals in a firm kind of an environment. And again, from an individual firm to academia kind of environment, from academia to individual firms kind of environment. So basically, there should be a kind of a very deep cross-pollination of ideas. Now, at least one part of the ecosystem is taken care of. People move from firm to firm, and even if they do not move from firm to firm, people have friends across firms and they talk. And when they talk, they kind of exchange ideas. And it can it need not be highfalutin innovative ideas. I happen to work in the private sector. I talk with my peers in competitive firms, and kind of they kind of ask me what do we feel about the market, and market, I mean in the competitive landscape, and our clients, and etc. And I ask him about his opinions about what are the recent trends that he is seeing. So there is always a cross-pollination of ideas, and it need not be that, in great technological fields like science and technology and things like that. So the idea is under high spillover effects, there's a crowding in under high spillover environment, there's a crowding in effect at play. So how do we really leverage this? And what is the economics of R&D really? How do we really define success in something as like this? There are evidences that so for the purposes of this policy package, I'm going to define having $1 billion sales of annual sales of a medicine, of a new innovative drug as a success. There is evidence that the number of $1 billion drug sales is increasing. There is evidence that we are kind of going into a $10 billion plus kind of a market pretty soon. So there you get super blockbuster drugs for that matter. Yeah. So the point that I'm trying to come to is this thing, that if we are to assume that we require new solutions to solve the tropical problems that we face, for example, a vaccine against dengue, a vaccine against chikungunya, we will have to do it. And how do we differentiate between two drugs which are claiming to solve the same problem? By its market, by its market adoption. Yeah. So now the question becomes really that how do we really go from this place where we are spending approximately nothing on R&D per se, and I mean, and I did not mean on the government side, I mean even on the even on the private side, to a situation, to a state of the world where we are spending, where we are basically able to churn $1 billion plus sales drugs almost on bill, almost on demand. Now, the point is this thing that we have to understand this point, that it is not really a market risk that any innovator firm will take. India has 1.2 billion people or 1.4 billion people, depending upon how you look at. Perhaps everyone is susceptible to a dengue at any point of time. Yeah, even if we basically kind of, even if you basically kind of value basically one dosage or multiple dosage at 80 to 100 rupees per dose, you get basically, about $1 billion kind of a situation. $1 billion kind of a sales. So the point is this thing that India is not, it is not a market risk problem, it's a product risk problem. How do we really build those products? So what I suggest is we basically kind of understand the economics of R&D really. So I'll basically portray 2-3 factoids. We do not know the economics of R&D very well, but what we do know is that usually it takes about 3,000 raw ideas, and I mean embers of ideas in the minds of science and technology researchers to generate one bankable idea, one commercial success. In the case of manufacturing, it is about approximately 3x more. So roughly about 9,000 ideas, raw ideas that basically, create the raw material for one good idea to come through, or one good commercial success to come through. Now, understand this point, these 9,000 raw ideas, when they first come into the researcher's mind, they are basically like, a kind of, does it sound interesting enough of a solution path to pursue or not? So the initial self-screening is done by the researchers themselves. Of those which are more promising, they go to their funders to seek the funding for. So what we want to basically build is this, that a dedicated fund to basically fund those kind of research ideas which the researchers think are promising. So the policy package aimed for about $50 to $64 billion boost in pharmaceutical manufacturing owing to innovation. So earlier we talked about getting the quality problem solved. Solving the quality problem will, also kind of push the exports up. But what we kind of found out was, or rather, what I kind of found out was that about $50 to $64 billion of export sales from innovation will kind of help us reach the problem of right now. India is approximately at $30 billion of exports. We want to take it to about 450 plus billion dollars of exports. So about $50 to $64 billion of the incremental exports will come from the innovation. So the idea is to get to that level, you want approximately 50 blockbuster $1 billion plus kind of a sales drugs to about 13 to 14, commercial, so approximately 50 blockbuster drugs and about 74 to 80 relatively modest successes. So to do that, we basically kind of, did like I kind of went back and did a reverse engineering that how much, because under success curve assumption, you can basically go back one step ahead and, try to find out that approximately how many ideas you want to fund. So when you basically get the ideas that you want to fund, that you want to have to build, then you understand that if these many ideas we have to fund, in India, we usually have about 1/10 of the research costs compared to Western countries. So what is the idea for that? The idea is that CSIR developed certain cancer drug candidates for Indian population, and it costs about more, I think $125,000 for the entire research. In a developed world, it would have cost about $1 billion plus. Sorry, $1 million plus about. So just for that, that initial cancer drug screening this thing. So the idea that I'm trying to bring out is that we do have the economics of the ideas that we want to fund about in our numbers. What we kind of want to go ahead with this thing that we want to fund those ideas. We want to go into creating those about 96,000 raw ideas is what we want to fund. And for that, the number that was coming out was about $12 billion. Now, I kind of consider that this $12 billion is basically an amount that if we put forward, it's going to be matched, 70% of which is going to be matched with the private sector. So roughly we'll be landing up at $21 billion of a total investment that India will be making. Now, a $21 billion will basically get us all the way through creating those kind of numbers. But how do we really go about doing this? And for that, I kind of draw attention to the famous paper by Mashelkar, Shah and Thomas, where they talked about setting up a Bay Dole type of research fund or research, a research environment in India. So what I kind of want to go forward is that they talked about Nimitli. So we want to go forward and build a Nimitli type of institution for pharmaceutical innovation. And we want to basically enable the government to buy the innovation and enable the crowding in of the private investment. So one way to basically go about doing this is that we want to basically set up a public funding, a commitment for public funding of this amount. So once we do that, it is just not enough. We have to kind of edit. We have to kind of go back and modify our procurement policy as well, R&D procurement policy as well. We want to kind of ensure that Government of India will stand as a permanent but optional buyer of innovations. The innovations that fail to hit the market because they are not good enough, but government stands and says that, you know what, I'm going to bankroll your research budget because no effort is wasted effort and nothing is a failure except failure of best efforts. So what this policy ensures is this thing: by setting up a near infinite appetite for research, I am basically setting the demand curve extremely high. Or if you think from the perspective of the microeconomics, there is a demand curve and there's supply curve. The supply curve is trending up, is going up, and the demand curve is sliding down for a given price. We want to flatten the demand curve and locate it at infinity so that the supply curve responds to this change in the demand appetite as fast as possible and creates the innovation goods as much as possible, because you cannot saturate away the market. Now, of course, Government of India is limited by its own resources. We are not working in an infinite money world. So the idea that we will be kind of buying innovation from the market itself is a big enough signal for the private market to respond. Now, what do I mean by the suppliers of innovation goods? Suppliers of innovation goods are independent labs, are scientists, are the research ecosystem, and the entire works. So this entire ecosystem are the suppliers of the research goods or innovation goods, and it has to kind of respond. Think of the environment, what will happen when a private firm is realizing that, hey, if it works, I can profit from it. If it doesn't work, I can sell to the government. Now, a lot of people might kind of get their fiscal conservatism in, it will rankle the fiscal conservatism sense that how will it work, because there may be a lot of abuse and the government may be spending money in buying wrong stuff. So this is where the problem is, this thing that when we have a Nimitli kind of a situation, we can have those kind of expert screening committee who can quote unquote value and attach some number to those innovations, to those innovations in a technical, sophisticated way. Granted, those numbers will be off. We will be making mistakes in valuing them. Something as intangible as patents and something as intangible as those aspects, we cannot quite value them. But it is still, we are wasting money anyway. We are wasting money in fertilizers. We are wasting money in food and fertilizer and interest payments. We are wasting money in financing BSNL and propping up BSNL. Rather than wasting money over there, let us waste money over here. We either way, the cost of the burden of proof is not on the government to kind of show whether BSNL deserves a second lease of life or not. Rather than do that, let us actually quote unquote to waste money over here. Of course, it requires packaging. No government will be basically saying that let us not waste money over there, let us waste money over there. But then our bureaucrats are creative bunch. They can find out reasons to do that. The point is, once the innovations are purchased, it is just not enough. All innovations purchased by the government will have to be socialized with zero licensing fee for any potential patent usage. That means it has to be kind of, it has to be made open to the society. And no approval process is necessary to basically make anything good out of it. So someone like you and me can basically use those innovations because the government has made them made them available for us for free, to use for free, and we can basically build on it, improve upon it, and make it more viable if we desire to. If a potential defense use is identified, we can basically stretch this window for 15 years. And that is up for debate too. 10 years, 7 years, 15 years, take your pick. And the last point that I'm going to kind of push forward, which is not related directly to innovation, but it is going to kind of create the necessary supply chain or supply of the manufacturers of this innovation good, is human resource. We do not have FDI in higher education. We do not have FDI in higher education and setting up of research labs and in biological and chemical domains. What really prevents us from doing that? What really prevents us from giving, having a proper policy for foreign firms from setting up their research labs? There are multiple problems. So there's a note by principal scientific advisor who kind of figured out that there are certain kind of problems in getting those research goods in place in India. But there is no reason that we cannot allow 100% FDI in higher education and research. There is no reason that we cannot allow 100% FDI in setting up of research labs in India. There's no problem that I do not foresee any problem that we cannot allow 100% FDI in basically even secondary even in secondary patent purchase market. Government need not always purchase the market. Government can be one of the players in that market. So that basically kind of improves the market discipline of the purchase of this entire ecosystem as well. So the idea is, like, I have only four recommendations. Let us create a dedicated fund and call it a research innovation fund on the lines of Nimitli for pharmaceuticals. We had basically a fund called New Millennium Indian Technological Leadership Initiative. So New Millennium Indian Technological Leadership Initiative, Nimitli, which under CSIR, which did some good work. And it showed us how to procure and do a private-public partnership in research. We can lean hard on that experience and create the Nimitli for pharma. Fund it with $12 billion and go ahead with these changes. Let us set up an R&D procurement policy. Let us use a post-purchase use policy. And let us allow, for God's heaven's sake, an FDI in these domains of the market. So this basically sets up the quality and the innovation problem. And what we kind of think is this thing that the quality problem will get solved, because we have seen that when basically India went about doing regulation of its equity markets well, and by establishing an autonomous body called SEBI, our equity market volumes exploded. The entire ecosystem exploded. I consider if we are to create something like a CDA, the entire research environment will the quality environment, the export environment will explode. We will see a massive increase in the exports ourselves. There will be a lot of faith in India manufactured goods. And when we also bolster our quality pillar with effective innovation pillar, we will not only be the pharmacists of the world, but also will be the healthcare professionals of the world. And that is basically the ultimate vision that we want to achieve. Today, our exports are about $30 billion. If we reach $400 billion plus, roughly split by $350 billion of exports and $350 billion of generic drug exports and $50 billion of innovator drug exports, we basically kind of bolster our positioning in the world as problem solvers of the world. We will be having, so in foreign security, there's a concept of Pax Americana, Pax Romana, in the Pax Britannica. So there was a period when the superpowers ensured that there is peace in the world, a peace guaranteed by the military might of the superpowers. Today we are, at least still in the 90s, we were in the world of Pax Americana. And it created a huge surge of exports and trade and trust and all those things. But that is the role of peacekeeping, a peacekeeper or a law enforcer in the world. I propose that India, by solving the healthcare problems of the world, can usher in a world of a different world, for example, where India sets up not a Pax Indica, but rather a Virtua Indica, something good set up by India. So the idea is that this is a policy package, and with, like all policy packages, there are unintended consequences and unintended consequences of every policy. And what I consider, there are two unintended consequences of this. Say, for example, we do go ahead with creating an ecosystem in India where drugs are more affordable and accessible. And I'm going back to the policy discussion that we discussed yesterday. What we are facing in India is a huge degree of drug resistance. We can lose our war against drug resistance because we have made the drugs accessible, but our other arm of clinical pharmacological designs and the entire ecosystem of healthcare providing the healthcare is not something that is under the ambit of this policy. And if we do not reform that, we run into the risk of our doctors or our healthcare professionals or our healthcare system not understanding what can happen under the interaction of easy accessibility to the drugs when the other parts of this ecosystem has not improved itself. India has been fighting multiple drug resistance strains of TB for quite some time. And it is quite possible that when drugs are made more available, it can get worse. CDA's job, for that matter, is to the only regulatory authority that we created in this entire policy package is to basically regulate drug quality. It is not to basically set up the pharmacological designs. It is not exactly clear how the space it will be regulated. At least I have not thought through the problem. But right now it is regulated through individual missives from IMA, Indian Medical Association, and IMA on its own has its own problems. So in absence of reforms on that area as well, we can actually see unintended consequences play out in this way. There is another aspect to it, is that there is an aspect of over-treatment which is going, in India. So Jishnu Das and Hammer, two researchers, kind of find out that there's a marked tendency for over-treatment in India. And funnily, the Overtreatment is not from the doctor's side, but it is always from patient side. The patient wants, an immediate resolution to the problem. Now, herein basically comes the very interesting aspect of our Ayush ecosystem. Ayurveda, homeopathy, and all those alternative medicines, or let me call it quack medicinaries, they prescribe steroids, painkillers, and anti-inflammatories, in dosages or in strengths that have no scientific evidence behind them, and they pass it off as their own formulations, Ayurvedic formulations or homeopathic formulations, and they go about, and that kind of solves the problem, at least temporarily, for the patients. The point is this thing that when we make medicines more accessible and affordable, what really does it do to the steroids, painkillers, and the anti-inflammatory abuse that happens by these professionals? I would say this thing that we run into the serious risk of going into a territory without appropriate safeguards, and without, so we run the risk of creating a massive problem over here. There is no compunction in providing low quality, poor medical advisory in India, at least on those professionals' part. But this is also a market response. Let us not consider Ayush, Ministry of Ayush, or the professionals, it turns out, as part of the as a problem, at least at the first level. They're also a market response. We are just not producing enough high quality medical professionals throughout the country, and they are not as easily accessible to the remotest parts of the country. And as a result, we do get to see these kind of anomalies like the local quacks, jhadfuks, Ayurvedic professionals, homeopathic professionals, and these things. I do not see there is any difference between someone going to a local shaman and someone going to a homeopathy doctor. Both are caused because I do not have access to a quality medical professional at my village. So this is the grander problem that basically is the reason why A, I am not going to the medical professional, and B, I do not have faith on the medical professional that I'm going, because often there's a problem of fake certificates that is very rampant in India. What is the solution of it? I do not have a very well designed solution, except that we have to kind of redesign our medical professional manufacturing pipeline. How? We have to kind of do a ground up study of basically how do we do it. I'm not a dedicated healthcare professional or healthcare policy maker, so I have not really given it much thought as of yet. But yes, it goes without saying that we have to solve that. There will be some kind of a pushback. In fact, I do expect a massive pushback from at least the three main sets of people. The existing state drug regulatory agencies, who were basically running their own fiefdoms in individual states, stand to lose their mandate or their independence under the new regime. Existing investigation agencies, quite frankly, may also kind of sense a lot of a problem, because we are equipping the CDA to conduct human intelligence and electronic surveillance and all those things. The existing investigative agencies and enforcement agencies may consider that as an infringement on their territory. And the third is social welfare activists, who might kind of find out that all the affordability solutions that we talked about in our previous video, that has non-intuitive solutions. For example, increasing the price of Jan Aushadhi Kendras. prices of Jan Aushadhi Kendra supplied medicines, that is. Doing ideas like HSIA, Health and Savings Investment Account. These kind of things, and even social welfare activists might find it unpalatable that we are equipping a government agency to conduct surveillance on private citizens. So these three kind of set of critics have to be tackled individually. So what I would say is this thing: let us manage the activists this way, that let us engage with them. Let us not basically kind of push them away. Let us engage with them and impress upon them that there are adequate safeguards. There are adequate safeguards in basically how the CDA will conduct its surveillances. No surveillance will be conducted without an appropriate warrant or appropriate permission from a high court judge level person, judiciary. We do have certain built-in safeguards like Bima Dost, who will kind of take care of these kind of hand-holding problems while the most vulnerable and poor navigate the complex financial products that that I am recommending. So the idea is we basically kind of divide and conquer between the bureaucrats who are resisting the change because it kind of disturbs their own way of operating. So, for example, not all bureaucrats will be thinking alike. For example, the SDRAs in those states who are importing their drugs from the states who are manufacturing it, someone like a UP or Bihar, will obviously be in favor of something like this because they are bearing the brunt of bad quality drugs that are manufactured in the drug manufacturing states. So you basically have two sets of SDRAs working against each other. One who are located in the drug manufacturing states and one who are located in the drug importing states. That's one thing. The second thing is also this, that public choice theory says that as long as the norms and the goals and the path for how a particular bureaucrat is evaluated for his work, that is cleared or that is clarified, the bureaucrats will be much more amenable to a change because they now know how to game the new system. Now, obviously, as policymakers, we do not want people to game the system, but game they will. So what my essence is that we make the inclination to game or inclination to climb up the ranks and grow in their career align with the larger agency's goals. So, for example, if we are able to kind of align the KPIs and the KRAs of the individual inspectors such that we are able to kind of link the performance of how a particular manufacturing site under their ambit is performing in terms of their own in terms of the drug quality adherence, standard adherence, then the overall problem, the agency's goals of minimizing drug rejects is aligned with the individual micro goal of each bureaucrat. The bureaucrat will now know that I cannot be acting as a roving bandit. I have these three manufacturing sites or manufacturing facilities to take care of to ensure that no single reject passes through the gates. Now, when I am basically working through that, I cannot position myself at the port when basically the drug is supposed to be waiting at the port to be shipped. I have to locate myself at the closer to the manufacturing site. When I'm looking at the manufacturing side, I'm not necessarily always going to kind of apply a kind of a mm, punitive measures or raid mentality to basically, find out the rejects. I'm going to bring in a little bit more collaborative approach to it. Perhaps I might be basically doing a consistent cadence of drug testing once every week or once every 3 days or once every 2 days or something like that. And that is how basically, and any reject and how many rejects and how many drug samples we basically come out that come out of the system, that come out of a particular inspector's ambit, that are rejects that may be directly linked with his overall performance. Now, the point is this thing that what happens when basically that kind of a situation where basically an inspector is holding the manufacturer hostage and to blackmails. So the idea is this thing that if the manufacturer is holding, if the inspector is holding the manufacturer to blackmails, then it really means that the the testing procedure, that the entire testing reporting, the reporting life cycle is being held in the total control of the inspector himself. That is, he can forge the results as he wishes to for his blackmailing threat to be credible. So the way is, let us not basically have the testing done only in the government labs. Let us open up the entire ecosystem to all the private NABL labs. The amount of influence that an inspector will have on government labs will be more than the amount of influence that the same inspector will have on the NABL, on the private NABL accredited labs. So the idea is we do have certain ideas how we can basically align the interests of the bureaucrats to align with the larger goals of the agency. And that is how basically we kind of go forth with basically building a agency where there is autonomy for the individual inspectors. We exchange autonomy vis-a-vis accountability. Right now, Indian agencies and Indian bureaucrats have neither accountability nor autonomy. It's a grand bargain that we are striking at an individual inspector level, individual bureaucrat level, street bureaucrat level, that, hey, look, here is the autonomy. In exchange, this is the accountability we seek. And here are the constraints, and here are the incentives, and here are the reporting, here is the reporting KPI dashboards that we'll be monitoring. And obviously the reporting dashboards that we'll be monitoring cannot really have any undue influence from the inspectors themselves. So a kind of a statistical system to monitor the overall health of the enforcement also has to be there. And it is not a grand leap of problem. It's just basically we kind of diversify and deconcentrate our testing mechanisms. And we basically make the report upload and download automated and server and technology based. This, by the way, is already being done at FDA level, where each and every FDA approved site each and every FDA approved site has machines which upload the test results on a centralized server for the FDA inspectors to inspect. And that extends also to the Indian sites. So any Indian manufacturer who is FDA approved, all the machines that are located in that site upload their digital records on this thing, on cloud. And it is not tamperable it's not human tamperable. Any attempts to tamper human will be any attempts to tamper by a human will basically result in a blacklisting of that site and perhaps of their entire manufacturer. So you bring in technology to enhance the reportage and ensure that there's no blackmailing involved over there. So yeah, so this basically kind of concludes the entire policy package. The idea is we kind of keep an eye towards unintended consequences. We keep an eye towards the public choice theory. We keep an eye towards civil rights. We keep an eye towards the individual ethnographic considerations, where basically anthropological considerations, where basically we resist the temptations for high modernist ideas. And I'll be the first one to accept that there are certain high modernist ideas over here, like insurance and HSIA. So we need to compensate those high modernist ideas with a people-oriented solution, so that the bridge between the people sophistication and the high modernist ideas is bridged by someone who is willing to handhold the people in the middle. So this basically concludes the entire policy package for me. So what are your thoughts about it? You're on mute.
So the point about crowding in, right? I think that reminded me of the idea of marginal cost of public fund, and this crowding in kind of is like directly opposite of it, right? Marginal public fund tells us that every rupee which is extracted from the citizens, or it is, let's say, in any government policy, it has a cost associated, and typically that's like 3x of it. So
yes.
Cost. But here, something opposite happening. Every month, 1 rupee spent on promoting innovation will actually be discounted by 0.7 by market chipping in between.
Yes.
That way you are saving 70% of your money anyways. Great.
Yeah. So it would be fair to, sorry, please go ahead. Yeah.
I was about to start the closing remarks, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, so it will be fair to assume that two aspects, that in the initial periods, there will be some time for the private market to kind of respond to that $1 incremental investment by the state. So good to assume that, it'll start with 0.2 cents, $0.2, and then it'll move to $0.5 and $1 and $0.7. One other aspect of this thing is that this is not a consistent investment that the government has to make. The experiences in the Western countries has kind of revealed that the investments that were made in 1950s onwards were basically state dominated, and the private market investments were only supplementing the main efforts. Now, what has happened is this thing that the private investment in R&D has outstripped the government spending in R&D. Of course, the government spending in R&D has also kind of flattened out, but the private spending in R&D has outstripped the government spending in R&D, and that is what we want. We want basically, that the private market should basically make the state. That is an ideal libertarian dream, that the private market should make the state redundant and obsolete. So at least in the innovation case, that is one thing. But there's still some there's still decent case to be made for a continued investment in the innovation sector. The second aspect of this thing, that let us not make a mistake, that we are not so there is still a cost associated with this incremental $12 billion or whatever amount that we are trying to spend on innovation, and we are raising through tax money. But as the policy paper will basically show and talk, that I am not at least basically recommending levying of new taxes. I'm not saying that let us add more taxes, innovation cess for that matter. Oh God, that seems completely diabolical just for the sake of it. What I'm saying is this: let us restructure our spending patterns. Let us not go about in these pipe dreams of basically reviving BSNL. We have basically spent in this recent budget, we are spending approximately, I think, $3 billion, 18 to 24,000 crores in reviving BSNL. Why are we doing this? We can basically use that to, do the, fund our R&D. But also, we are spending a lot of amount in the fertilizer subsidy. There was a committee report by Kanimori, committee report, which said that, fertilizer subsidy need to be dismantled. But it stopped short of it and said that, we cannot dismantle it now because, it'll create a massive price shock. But the idea is it's a it's a bad subsidy. It neither promotes equity nor promotes efficiency. We have food subsidy. We have a massive food subsidy bill running. We have massive interest payments running. The interest payments are basically the biggest amount of our tax outgo. There is some indication that government is basically trying to pay down and restructure the NHAI's debt to zero in the next 5-6 years. That will save about approximately $3 billion of interest outgo. So the idea is that we do have some amount of money coming from here and there if we basically rationalize our spending patterns, and we do have enough money to basically fund a proper pharmaceutical innovation program. But sample this. If today we divest all our PSUs at the current market prices, we will be able to spend a $12 billion on innovation every year for the next 25 years and still have some money left. And mind you, the $12 billion need not be spent every year. The $12 billion was a commitment to basically create 50 blockbuster drugs and about 70 to 80 commercial successes. Both kind of, building $64 billion of total exports. And that would have been spanning across to 10 years. So $12 billion spending in 2024. 2034, we'll be having $64 billion of innovative drugs. Now imagine if we divest all our PSUs today, and we are able to set up 25 such funds every year. Sorry, 25 such funds for creating our own innovation programs. That's a massive game changer. So yeah, so that is basically the entire long and short of it. So yeah.
Great. So a lot of interesting ideas and insights for me at least, to chew on and think about. I am sure many of these ideas will help us, if not untie the Gordian knot, at least cut it.
Yep. Hope so. Big hopes. Yes, but I hope so.
So great, Soham. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll soon get back again with another new idea in the world of policy and continue our policy jam.
Sure.